What's up everyone, Guy here with another Presents. This time I'm focusing on Attack of the Killer Tomatoes. Definitely another timeless classic. Ow! Okay, enough with the snark already. Anyway, before I was so rudely interrupted, Attack of the Killer Tomatoes came out on October 20th, 1978. It was a dark comedy horror musical film thing that exists and was one of my favorite movies as a kid. Actually, it was my parents who got me into Attack of the Killer Tomatoes. They'd always sing that goofy theme song around the house because it was so darn catchy. The film starts with a tomato coming out of a woman's kitchen sink and attacking her on the spot. When the police find her body, they find not blood, but ketchup at the crime scene. The film opens up as almost an homage to Night of the Living Dead, as police officers are shooting at fields of rampant tomatoes. To show the devastation of the killer tomato attacks, a kamikaze tomato attacks a helicopter pilot, causing their helicopter to crash. But that actually wasn't intended during the script. During production, the pilot lost control of the helicopter and it crashed. While no one was hurt, they absolutely had to use that footage of the helicopter crash. It cost $60,000 for that helicopter and was almost the entire film's budget of $100,000. But in this John DeBello-directed horror comedy, a team of specialists is put together led by Mason Dixon, who is played by David Miller. Among Dixon's specialist crack team is an Olympic athlete, a scuba diver, a master of disguise, and Wilbur Finletter, his parachute-toting sidekick. While Dixon is hot on the trail of the tomatoes, so is Lois Fairchild, played by Sharon Taylor. And as the film progresses, the tomato conspiracy is slowly uncovered. You may be surprised to learn that Attack of the Killer Tomatoes is not one of the greatest films of all time. I mean, seriously, look at the score on Rotten Tomatoes. It's a tomato-themed site, and it still gives it a low score. That's a bit of irony for you. Ow! Quit it. But the film was self-aware of its own goofy nature, as were other 70s comedy films of the time. There are a lot of great comedy moments in this, and some really weird ones. The film's sense of humor is really subversive and has a lot of genuinely funny moments in it despite its ridiculous premise. Anyway, Attack of the Killer Tomatoes also made fun of those 70s disaster movies that were so popular at the time. There's a lot of great one-liners, some silly gags, and probably a few jokes that wouldn't fly too well with today's audience. Before being assigned to infiltrate the Tomatoes camp, the disguise artist Sam Smith goes undercover as George Washington, Abraham Lincoln, and Hitler. Because why not? And there are a few scenes that seem a little long, like the ad executive scenes. Although there is a payoff when the character Jim Richardson, who is played by George Wilson, gets the reaction scene to some of the more unconventional ad ideas. And among all the rampant tomato attacks, there are a couple songs throughout the film. There is, of course, the Attack of the Killer Tomatoes theme song, as well as the song that ultimately becomes the Tomatoes' undoing, a song called Puberty Love. That song came from a very young Matt Cameron, who you may better recognize as the drummer from Soundgarden and Pearl Jam. Among one of the personal highlights for me is that a good bulk of the footage was shot in San Diego, so you can recognize a couple landmarks here and there. Although I don't recognize all the streets and neighborhoods, so if any of my San Diego friends can point any of those out in specific, definitely leave me something in the comments. Attack of the Killer Tomatoes' origins also resonates with me, as it originally began as a student film, put together by John DeBello and James Stephen while they were at the University of California in Davis. Although no known copies of this version exist, I heard they got an A for it, so good job, guys. Is Attack of the Killer Tomatoes worth your time? It depends on how much you like stupid humor. Ow! Quit it. Attack of the Killer Tomatoes has been out of print for a while now, although they did just recently re-release it on Blu-ray and DVD with a really cool cover that looks like an old video rental copy. The video quality is actually quite nice, and they digitally remastered it in 4K for all that tomato squishing glory. I also like the fact that they put cover art on it, because have you seen a lot of recent home video releases lately? It's just basically the protagonist's face up close and personal, and that's what they consider for video art these days? Ugh. Attack of the Killer Tomatoes is as goofy as it gets, and it's also made fun of those 70s disaster movies that were so popular at the time. It's absurd, silly, doesn't always make sense, sometimes the plot meanders here, there, and everywhere, but man, when the jokes land, they are definitely funny. While the Mystery Science Theater 3000 guys didn't cover Attack of the Killer Tomatoes, Elvira sure did. If you want a little bit of B-movie or possibly Z-movie silliness, this is definitely the one to get. An absolute cult classic. Well, anyway, that's it for this version of Presents. I've got a couple other film ideas I'll be digging out over the next couple weeks, and some other concepts as well. So if you have any suggestions, as always, like, comment, subscribe, all the usual video stuff. But if you'd like to see more of these oddball choices, definitely let me know. But until then, it's all geek to us. You know, I was kidding right earlier. You know, we're cool, right? We're cool. Oh boy. Ow! Quit it.